Welcome to our conversation today. Today we have a guest. As always, we're very happy to have a guest, and I shall let her introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Yara. I'm excited to be here. My name is Mame Astou, and I'm a inner work English. I'm an inner work coach for Muslim women, and I'm also a teacher. So yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Really glad to have you here. And before we started recording, we were just having a conversation around mirroring and how we might see ourselves in other people. And let's just take it from there. And I think I'll start with the story that I was just giving you. That not so long ago, I was walking around in my neighborhood and I came across a group of kids. And they were around 12 ish. They were young boys taking a break from school. They were just running to a shop. And I got scared. I got scared. Then I started having this whole internal conversation with myself. Why are you scared? They were maybe five young boys who were around 12, and I tensed up a little bit and started thinking, and then I asked myself, why are you tensing up? What is it about 12-year-old boys that is a cause for concern? And then that's when it hit me. It took me back to when I was younger, and then I realized that I'd had some, not some well, there were a couple of bullies when I was younger, and I guess that's what came to my mind. Some there were some when I was in grade 5. There were some two young boys who were in my class who used to bully me and just say really mean things about me. So I guess that my psyche went back there immediately. Yeah. What's your
Yeah.
story on that?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I love that you asked that question of like, what is it about these boys that would kind of trigger this sense of fear? Because my mind, I mean, my heart immediately answered like just out of control. They are truly not controllable, and they're at the age where they know that, and that's scary when we come from a place of like feeling like need for control or trying to create our own safety, especially like in your situation, for example, like genuinely having experienced negative, like had negative experiences with boys of that age in the past, and those memories kind of coming up. So I find it interesting that these things that we can kind of float through life as adults and become unconscious of, when we see, especially children, they'll immediately bring it back to the surface.
And I really thought it's crazy, crazy to the extent that I wasn't. My mind was just floating elsewhere. I mean, I'm an adult. I'm much bigger. If it were that kind of situation, so I was trying to figure out for myself why. Then that realization that I've actually just been taken back in my mind, taken back to something that I clearly hadn't finished processing. That was a shock. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy because, especially in those moments, we can literally forget. I think, especially because it's not like there's any real rituals of stepping into adulthood um, in most of our cultures and societies nowadays. So it just kind of happens when you pick up certain responsibilities. And you mentioned this earlier in our conversation that you kind of have to tell yourself, okay, I am an adult now and I am the adult now. I remember literally my first year teaching. I was teaching third graders, and it was a class of maybe 30, 35 kids. And I felt this level of anxiety of, I don't know if they're going to listen to me. I know they don't have to listen to me, technically, even if they don't know that. Just a lot of like fear of stepping into this position of leadership and power, in a sense. And I was speaking to another teacher who we literally started on the same day. Um, so he had zero more experience than me. But I remember him, and he taught second graders, I taught third graders, basically the same. We were having a conversation, and he said something along the lines of, I'm not gonna let these little 7-year olds like make me feel afraid, or something along those lines. And I was just like, you're right. They're literally babies. Like, what's going on in my mind right now that's triggering fear? Like, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen? Somebody like throws a tantrum, you know? And it's that realization of, oh, I'm not that kid anymore. I have more faculties and maturity, and I can handle this, even if I don't necessarily know how to. Maybe that's kind of where that trust starts to come in, like that self trust.
No, beautiful. And I think also kids, it will sound crazy, but I'll correct it just now. I was going to say kids, like animals, feel your energy. The
Yes.
reason I'm correcting it is partly because kids are also have a certain level of innocence. They're they have less of what society has told them they should and shouldn't think. So they are much more their purer self, so much more connected to their senses from that perspective. So they're able to pick, even a baby is able to just pick up your energy, and then from that see that this one, no, 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 this is not energy I want around me, and just start crying. And I am not saying that's why babies cry. No. I'm just saying as an example that if you are showing up towards children with this half, I'm not sure, will this go, will they listen to me, then they'll likely read your energy and just play it around on you, just flip it around and decide we're not listening to you. Yeah.
Yes, especially because the younger they are, the more that they are just absorbing everything around them and behaving accordingly. So I found especially that, 1 year olds, 2 year olds, they will literally mirror the exact energy that you give them, especially on a consistent basis. So I have a nephew. He's 2 years old now. I love him to bits, and I'm very like physically affectionate. So I've always been hugging him, like giving him kisses, since he was a baby. And then he would start to like give me kisses or like hug me when he like sees me and like run up to me. Like he always matches that energy. And people would
Mm.
be like, "Oh, he loves you. Like you guys are best friends." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I love him more than anybody else on the planet." So
Ah,
there.
you've reminded me of a story I heard. I got it from what's the name of that book? I don't know, I've forgotten the book, by Dr. Perry and Oprah Winfrey. What happened to you? That's the name of the book. So he's giving the story about a situation. So the guy, Dr. Perry, he was at an airport. Their flight had been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, and everyone at the airport was upset and unhappy and grumpy. And he was seated next to a guy who was a businessman in a suit, who just kept going up and asking the personnel there, I'm very important, I must get on the flight, just call me your manager. And it was a weather thing, so they were just told no one can help. It's the weather. We just need to wait for it to calm down. So at the same airport was two parents with their child, a girl who was maybe aged, I think the age was 3 or 4. And so the parents, you could tell, were tired, but were just following this girl who is exploring the world, happily exploring everything. So then at some point, this little girl comes up to this grumpy man. And the man, has. So then she just looks up at him, like expectantly and happily. And then he just, he's upset. So he just takes his newspaper and, puts it across, to hide his face and just get her the hint to go away. And the little girl then just takes her hand and, hits the paper. And then she giggles and laughs. And the guy, so the Dr. Perry who's telling the story, he was all braced because he was thinking, oh no, because Dr. Perry as an adult has a preconditioning of what this kind of businessman's reaction would be to such a situation. And that's how he explains it. And he says this child at 3 or 4 has been reinforced all her life that she is free to play and free to be happy. So her expectation is at that level, that people love her and play with her. And what happened? The guy in the suit melted. His heart just melted. He got on all fours and started giving her, piggyback rides across the airport floor. And what they were saying is because her expectations were met. She expected that she can be played with. And because of that, it's like everything just tilted to create that reality for her, because that's a reality she expected. Yeah.
Yes, that's so beautiful. That story is the reason I believe everyone needs to have at least one baby or child in their life.
That's so true. That's so
Wow.
true. Yeah. But that said, there's a time, and I don't know if it's gone. I used to fear children specifically because of, especially those young ones, they can say anything. They can just say anything that comes to their mind. They have this innocence that just, I don't know what they'd say. And sometimes I'd also be bracing myself, what if they just say something so wrong? And then, because again, as you said, they're a sponge. So maybe taking up things from their parents, and then they'd be saying things that are off. And then I don't know why I'd always imagine that the world would open up and swallow me whole.
I find that so interesting because it's that aspect of again that inability to kind of control the situation. They
Um,
can say whatever and bring up, maybe ideas or memories that we'd rather not see, behave in ways that we would rather not experience. And then, especially with a young child and being the adult, the responsibility is always on us to protect them and to figure out a way to maneuver through the situation that's healthy for both or all of the parties involved. And it's like almost expanding your container for communication and interaction with people kind of involuntarily.
I love that. It's an issue of control. That's so interesting. That here I am thinking that I've been working through control. I'm zen. I've given it all up now. Clearly, there's still much more work to do.
I felt exactly the same. Like, I'm so chill, I don't yell. I'm so, I try my best to be kind to everyone, which, I tried my best, sure, whatever. Um, but then I started at my new school this year. And I teach eighth grade now. So, we can imagine what that's like. The kids are very, you know, raw, I think I would say, in the sense that they're not trying to, you know, put on a show. Certainly not for me as a teacher. If anything, there can be a little bit more of the us versus you mentality. When I first showed up, because I showed up in October, the year had already started, they had a teacher before me who literally ghosted them, like just
Mm,
stopped showing up for work, didn't tell anybody what
okay.
happened or why. And that, unfortunately, is not the most uncommon sort of experience in charter schools. A lot of
Mhm.
teacher turnover. So they were lacking trust. um, they tried me, they tried it when I first showed up. And I remember telling the dean, because he asked me how my day was. And I was like, honestly, I was shocked. And me being shocked, I got triggered into, fight, flight, freeze mode. So I would find myself engaging in back and forths with the kids, yelling if I felt like that was the only way that they would listen to me, being extra punitive or very nitpicky, micromanaging. And these are all things that I have hated since I was a child. I was telling you this before, that I literally despise these types of behaviors from adults. And so seeing them come back up in myself, I was like, oh my goodness, you clearly have something that you need to figure out here as to why something is blocking you from being able to accept these kids as they are, love them where they're at, and be patient with them as you try and mold this classroom into the environment that you want it to be. And I've been there for a month. It's literally just been in the past couple days that I've really been able to start doing that because it's hard.
Can
It's hard
imagine.
work. Yeah,
No,
but
I
it's
can
been so
imagine.
good and very the more that I kind of lean back and allow them to be who they are, um, the more that I see and realize that there's so much more to them that I'm not aware of, They're full human beings. They're fully capable of respect and self reflection and kindness when they're not in that state of oppositional, combativeness. So, me stepping out of that has really helped. And I think that I wonder even if that's a reflection of the way that we can treat ourselves. I remember earlier we were talking about the internal family systems and the teenager within ourselves. Or I'm sure you explain much better than me.
Very good. No, carry on, carry on. Yeah.
Just in that sense of being able to, you mentioned that that teenager is almost kind of, raging against the machine to to put it in one way, to protect that inner child who is truly not, doesn't feel able to protect themselves and doesn't feel safe in the world. And we can fight that inner teenager and say, I don't accept your anger. I don't accept your rebellion. I don't accept your quote unquote negative behaviors. You're not allowed to be X, Y, and Z. We all know that doesn't work. But like creating a space for the teenager to actually feel safe is a whole new ball game.
Mm.
And that has to come with acceptance first.
You've touched on so many powerful points. And the one I'll touch on now is on just where you're leaving it off, the acceptance of the different parts of ourselves, that we have different parts of ourselves that show up in different ways, that we sometimes do not understand what's going on within us. Because, yes, we have this part that wants to do this part that wants to do that. And showing the leadership, being the leader, showing that you are the one, that you are in charge, and that you are able to hold yourself, that you yourself find yourself important, that you yourself
Mm.
love yourself and give yourself time, give yourself grace, give yourself comfort, depending on what you're going through. In this day and age where we're always just running around without enough time to stop and take care of ourselves, this is something then that becomes very key, a practice that we can take up very easily. And this just looks like I felt this way, like with those children that I happened to pass on the street. I got this feeling from passing those children on the street. Why? Well, where did that take me back? Then, if it takes me back to my situation with the bully, then maybe there is an inner child who was stuck at that age, an inner child who's still scared of, young boys, and then just reaching out to her and saying, "Look, I'm here. We survived those young boys when I was in grade 5. We've survived much, much more. And I'll be your leader. I'll take care of you. So you don't have to worry anymore." Yeah,
Yes, that's so beautiful. It's like a sense of healing the fragmentation between these different versions of yourself and being able to hold space for all of you at once. That's so beautiful.
absolutely. Oh, and I feel good. And there's something else you mentioned about leaning back. I love that. This idea, leaning back is a means of letting go of control. Because control is just that. You need to puppeteer. You need to be the one who is saying, you go here, you do that, sit down quietly, do your homework. But leaning back then opens space for them to consciously step forward, to be curious, even to be curious about the rules. Why is this a rule? Why should I sit quietly? And then from that curiosity there can be a conversation, I guess. But if you are there with all the attention, then that you don't reach a space where it's possible to invite them forward.
Wow. Wow, that's so beautiful because I think of, again, about kind of having that conversation within yourself, because I was thinking about how, we really underestimate, and it's so easy to underestimate the wisdom of children, the wisdom of, teenagers. They are so perceptive and aware and intelligent, and there's obviously certain things they don't know. Um, but at the same time, there's so much that we can learn from them. And I can imagine it's the same thing with the teenager within ourselves, the child within ourselves, that sometimes we don't want to listen to because that child's about to cry and I don't want to hear it, or I don't want to deal with it. Or that teenager is just yelling at me and I just think it's disrespectful and that's it. I just don't like the behavior. It needs to stop. But creating that space within yourself to be like, whatever is happening, I will hear you. You're allowed to feel how you feel. You're allowed to have at least, the innate reaction or response that you have. And then me, the adult version of me, I'm going to be able to process that in a way where I can respond in a healthy way externally.
I love that. I feel warm inside.
Me too. I love this conversation.
Completely. So what about, it's just a question that's come to my mind. I don't know if you have any ideas on it. I'm not a parent. Then I wonder, parenting, I assume is wonderful, first of all. It's a wonderful thing to be. But there is the added layer of being with the kids all the time. Yeah. So how to, do you have any thoughts on how to go back into this level of thinking that, yes, this is a whole human being who has something to say and can teach me as well? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's so interesting because I think that's one of I always think about that as the biggest thing that differentiates me as a teacher from parents. That I
Ah.
send them home to you at the end of the day. And at the end of the year, I would love to stay in contact with them. But the reality is, I may never see them again,
Mm.
potentially. And you, as a parent, you are connected to them for as long as you're both here on this earth. And I think that that can feel just in the same way that when it's difficult to be conscious of our own finite nature
Mm.
and that our lives are not really that long, they will end. It's difficult then also to recognize, these child years that I have with my baby. While he's a baby, I'm not getting them back. When my kid is a teenager right now, 12 to 17, whatever, this phase is short lived. As much as it doesn't feel like that right now, it will end. I'm not going to get this time back. And I think that maybe, and again, I'm not a parent either, so I just imagine that being able to find a way to remind yourself of that is important because then we step into, all right, well, what do I want my impact to be? What do I want my legacy to be? What do I want this child to remember from their childhood? What do I want myself to be able to remember and be proud of in these moments? And it helps you step into that higher version of yourself where maybe you feel like you don't have the energy. And that's the other thing that I would say and I would recommend, which I know it's so hard, um, but I think parenting is even harder when you aren't feel unable to make time for yourself, make time to just take care of yourself in the basic ways. Like if there's any possible way to invest in making a little bit of time and space for yourself, if it's a babysitter or a sibling who's willing to help or literally anyone, it takes a village. Nobody should be doing this on their own. And if you are insanely, immensely strong and you deserve space for yourself too. That's needed so that you can show up in the best version of yourself for your kids as well because they want that from you and they're proud of you when you take that space for yourself. They really are.
Such a beautiful message. Oh, really, really lovely. Really, really, yeah. No, I like it. I love it. I love it. And we were saying just again before the call, before we started recording, we mentioned that for women, it's much more difficult to do things for themselves. We seem to be we seem to put ourselves last in terms of priorities. We are eager to do things for other people, but in terms of doing it for ourselves, sometimes we might think that it's not as, we don't rank it in the same way. So we were just saying that if you're told to think of it of as how you'd talk to a 5-year old or a younger version of yourself or your niece or nephew, then that can immediately unlock a different perspective from the women's perspective that we do not see necessarily if it's just about us. So
Mm.
understanding that, but then yes, if it is possible, then do put that other person there, put your 5-year-old version of you who needs to rest, and then let them rest. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it makes me think about like to what extent do we acknowledge and accept our own humanness enough to treat ourselves the way that we're so committed to treating every single other human being. As women, especially, we are so empathetic and caring, and we want everyone to have the best experience. We feel, if we see a child, of course that child deserves love. you were once a child. You're also the same species of human, you know? Oh, well, this teenager deserves to have a voice and deserves to say what's on their mind, even if, I don't agree. So do you. This person, they
Absolutely.
have talent. Absolutely, they should follow their dreams. Absolutely, I believe in them. What about you? Like, we're the same. So anything that we believe that another person deserves just by virtue of being a human, we have to learn, I think, how to give ourselves the same grace and just accept that we don't need to be superhuman, superwoman, whatever.
Absolutely. And I think to some extent, patriarchy has taught us to take that step. We've been trained all our lives to be um, helpful to other people, which means that putting ourselves first wasn't ideal from that kind of training. So it's trying to, first of all, recognize that this is something that we've been taught and that's not necessarily true all the time. And from that perspective, say that, look, in my case, in this life, in this one life that I know about, I want to ensure that I enjoy I enjoy it, I enjoy certain aspects of it. And to that extent, then even though I have been trained that I shall be last, I shall pick situations where I shall be first. And this is one of them. Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Thank
In the
you.
same way that if somebody, like if a friend is having trouble believing in themselves, you would still support them. Doing the same thing for yourself is amazing.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Great. Great. And I wonder if that comes to it, because we are talking about mirroring in children. There is also mirroring in the other people around us, mirroring to the extent that we might, if we take the example of triggers, it's possible to see something in someone else or be in a certain situation that then triggers us and takes us back to either something we don't like in ourselves or something that we are yet to work through.
Mm. 100%. Honestly, that makes me think of how I think these days, sometimes I feel that sense of like fear a little bit more when I'm around adults, especially around my age, because I think even though kids can, be very raw, very honest, very blunt, they also give a lot of grace at the same time. Like they can be so mad at you today, and tomorrow they forgot, they don't care, they just love you and like want a hug. But adults, I think, don't always give the same grace because there's kind of that expectation of, well, we're both adults, you should be able to XYZ. At this age, you should know how to XYZ. Even though in reality, we've all had different life experiences. We all have um, different paths that we're going down and lessons that we're learning in different times. So one thing that I've definitely perceived recently from people around me, for example, is my people pleasing tendencies. And the way that people respond to that, it's so sad because the more that you feel, the more that you can be yourself and step into yourself, the more that others feel comfortable being themselves around you. And when you notice that people don't feel comfortable being themselves and they are almost trying to mirror that people pleasing energy, that's something that I've noticed recently. And I'm like,
Mm.
wait, I don't like that. I don't want that. you know?
Ah, you've just blown my mind to something because I now I'll have to question certain situations that I get into because I have noticed this is really good. So I've noticed being in situations where I notice the people pleasing tendencies, and I really, really don't like it. And part of me knows that I need to get away from it because part of me knows that that is still within me. I've been fighting hard to get away from the people pleasing tendencies. So when I see it, it probably scares me or just raises an alarm because if this is the energy that you're around, you're likely to be drawn back to this thing that you're trying to get away from. So trying to also just figure out where the people that I hang around with to ensure that I try as much as possible not to be with people whom I see myself in situations that I've been trying to to get away from. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Because honestly, it's very easy. And I don't mean to say this is a sort of value judgment or hierarchy, like one person's better than the other. But in terms of energy and the state that one is in, it is so much easier for somebody in a lower state to drag you down than it is for whoever's in a higher state to pull the other person up. Because
Mm,
you both require consent, but it's just a lot easier, I think, considering that we all have had negative experiences. It's easier to fall back into old patterns or
yes.
to fall into a negative mindset, and it's scary. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I think it's because the previous version of you is still there. You can cut the cord and let them go and tell them, but because it's something that you have experienced, that version is ready to reemerge and take center stage. So it's like you're running in the opposite direction, and yet this being around that energy is maybe comfortable actually, because it's something that you're used to. You're used to being in this in a lower state of people pleasing. If I don't know if people pleasing is a state as such, but from an energetic perspective, but maybe that just feels much more comfortable because you know it, as opposed to the direction that you're going into. If it's a journey and you're on your way, so you're not sure what it feels like to be there. You don't fully have the experience. So being around energy that is showing you, hey, we're still here, you can come back, it just then might be more comfortable for you to go to the lower level than reach out for the higher level that you're not accustomed to.
Wow, absolutely. Yes. That reminds me of like, it makes me think of the iceberg kind of visual, whereas people pleasing and the kinds of interactions that you have while you're doing that are on the surface. And, the hi, how are you? Have a good day. Like super polite, super, whatever, feels very mild and docile and like there's no potential for harm. And that's why I think it sometimes we can revert to that when we're coming from a place of I want to do no harm, or I want to make sure that I am being the best person I can. And the thing is that when we do delve deeper, and as you said, like actually embody your full self and step into your real journey, you have no idea what's coming next. You don't know how somebody else is going to respond to you or how you're going to respond to them. You don't know if you're actually going to vibe. It's like scary because you have to be open to the
Yeah.
experience of, oh, we actually don't really like each other. Or, oh, like this person really does not understand me. And that just has to be okay.
Yeah, no, really, really true. And when you have, like, one of the other things I again fighting, but I think now I'm better off, scarcity mindset. Because then you're thinking that this person, I need to have this person in my life. So if it is possible that in getting into a newer version of myself, then this person no longer fits, then who else will there be? I might be alone. Can I survive if I'm alone? But it's
Mhm.
trusting the process. It's trusting that your journey, what's coming for you will always be much better. If you're your authentic self, you never need to worry about anything else, because that is just you showing up as yourself. Whether or not people like you, it doesn't matter. Because you like
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Isn't it so ironic that we feel so much fear around like actually finding out who our authentic self is and fear of letting that person fully express, but it is consistently the most beautiful parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that feel like art, the parts of ourselves that we love in other people. And like, it's just a matter of letting that fear go. It's crazy.
Absolutely. No, that's, and it's also just beautiful. The parts of us that feel like art. I like that. That's really good.
Have
Oh,
you are you familiar with the concept of kintsugi?
no? What's that?
So it's this Japanese art form where essentially, I'm not sure if it is just pertaining to pottery or if it expands to other types of art, but people would take, beautiful complete pieces, break them, and then mold them back together with gilding those molds with gold, and so that the pieces come together looking more beautiful than they originally did.
Wow.
And I love, and I always think of that because I feel like that is what happens to us in life. Things break us, and then when we fully allow ourselves to be broken and just say, okay, what's next? Because I got to keep going. That's when that beautiful, like gold, like, I don't know if that's our like authentic self or true spirit or like divine energy, is able to fill that space and make us feel whole and come together in a beautiful new way again.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. The being able to accept the breakage, accept letting go of this is the path that I had for myself. I already know everything that I'm going to do. It must be this way. The control again, and being able to say that, look, this has happened, and I let go of control. I let go of expectations. Lead me because you know where we're meant to go, and that's taking us always somewhere more beautiful. That's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
That reminds me of the quote, like the grass is greener on the other side, and not in the way that people usually refer to it, but in the sense that the grass is truly greener on the other side of fear, on the other side of your protective barrier, on the other side of all the walls that you've put up. Like life is actually better when you're able to let those things go.
Wow. And that's partly the like the ego in us, this part that thinks that we know who we are, we have to be this way. And then also, because what I my practice is also a conversation with my ego. Yes, you're trying to protect me, and I appreciate that. None of our parts are bad. So if the ego is one of the parts, then it's thank you for trying to protect me, but again, I'm the leader, I got this. You don't need to protect me in this way anymore. Let's venture in this direction. I am taking the lead, so I'll take care of you as well. So don't worry about it. Let's just go and see where this path takes us.
Mm.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful, the confidence and the self trust and being able to say that, especially to your ego. Thank you, but I got this. I am the leader. I can take it from here. That is so beautiful. And I think like the essence of our inner work journeys is like getting to that point.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. This conversation, I mean, I could go on and on. I'm just having such a good time.
Me too.
It's so elevating. I really feel good in this conversation, and I really appreciate you. I thank you so much for coming here. This is I think this is just the kind of, do I call it like a kind of just pure truth? This is just pure truth, no added ingredients, just a conversation about life, how it is, and the things we don't necessarily see but are super important. Yeah.
Yes, it's been so beautiful talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me to your space.
Great. Then, do you have any final thoughts? Do you have some last nuggets of wisdom or anything else you want to share?
Mm, the words that come to mind for me, I think maybe an overarching theme of something we've discussed today is just letting go. It is so hard to let go of control when we feel like that is the only thing keeping us safe or keeping us sane or keeping us stable, but it's not. And if anything, it can be the opposite. And so often, the things that we are clinging to so hard, the reason we have to cling in the first place is because it's not meant to be there. So
Ah,
just let go of whatever you're clinging to, and everything else that remains is wholesome, is pure, is actually you, and is what will genuinely be there to support you.
such wisdom. Girls. Such wisdom. Thanks so much, Mama Stu. I highly appreciate, all of us highly appreciate your coming over to the podcast, sharing your time with us. We are grateful. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
very much.
much. I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you. As you said, very healing to just be able to hear from you and open up with you. So
Ah,
I appreciate it
lovely.
too.
Great. So that's all for this episode, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye bye.
Bye.
Oh.